Welcome back. Paul Hamler here. In the little introductory video there, fast forward, you saw me over to Ammo using this leather punch tool and an assorted selection of different materials. We got sponge back paper, Scotch-Brite, soft cloth, two-sided tapes, you name it. But we were punching these guys out and try to explain to you why we were doing that. One of the things that we're going to try to cover here is different techniques and different procedures that I've developed over the years when it comes to finishing, sanding, or polishing using my motorized handpiece or the Dremel tool. So all of these, not all of them, but the majority of them are based on using what we call a floppy disc. Now I will have in the description of the video the part number of the floppy disc and the vendor that you can buy these from. Here's two of them right here, a brown one and a turquoise. I think one's a little coarser grit. These are silicon type abrasive discs, but I'm not using them as they were meant to be used. I'm utilizing the flexibility of the floppy to mount different types of media to. And give you one example. Go buy you a pack of Velcro, and it comes in the hook and fuzzy stuff. I don't know what the name of that stuff is, but anyways, it's the two parts that you need to make a Velcro attachment. And on each one of them, they have a self-adhesive sticking material on it. And what I do is put one on the floppy disk. Like here's one, let me pull off the sandpaper, and it's got the hooks on it. And then the other piece is actually store-bought sandpaper that's made to go with a Velcro type sander. And I just punched out the 7/8 inch hole so I can attach it to the Velcro. Let me get the camera set up here so I can zoom in and we can demonstrate a few of these. Although I'm using a motorized electric motor handpiece, as long as the standard 8 and 5/32 or 3/16, I believe it are, will fit in your Dremel tool, all these attachments that we're going to demonstrate will work at a Dremel tool, a Foredom, or any type of handpiece that will accept the shank size here. So when you go to Google and Google leather hole punch, and what you might end up doing is go to images, and you'll see a couple of different styles. Here's one style. Here's one that comes with replaceable heads. But my preference with this guy here, matter of fact, if you can buy these at Home Depot, but you want 7/8 inch to match up the size of the floppy disk is a critical thing. So what we're going to do is put one of these floppy disks that's got Velcro attached to it, and always handy to have you a piece of brass to test out. The way you work this tool is you kind of lay it down on the edge out there and you push it back and forth. You're utilizing the flexibility of this floppy disk to give you a good flat surface. Just kind of walk it across there. You can knock off edges with it. I talked a little bit about the floppy disk and the Velcro on a video I did on wire inlay, and there was quite a bit of interest and response to it. So if you want maybe a little more detail than we're going to provide here, that would be go to my YouTube video on wire inlay. The other thing about these floppy disks, they're very flexible. For instance, all of these pieces that I was punching out earlier, not all of them, but most of them, can be attached to the floppy disk. One that I like for really smooth, fine finishing is get you some of these sheets of the sponge back sanding pads. They punch out. The only way I've come up effectively to attach the sponge to the floppy disk surface is with two-sided tape. And just be careful when you put it on there with your two-sided tape and you press it down, go all the way around and work it so that it's biting into the sponge. Other word of caution, when you turn your motorized tool on, Dremel or whatever, make sure it's always on the lowest setting. These things, if you run them 400,000 RPM, they will separate at times. So always start off at your slow setting. You will find optimum setting where they work very efficient. Now I'm going to show you two of them. Here's a coarse one made out of the sponge back paper. This would probably, you know, if you had something you was trying to clean up that was really bad, you'd start off with a coarser one. Now, what you can do is if you got sandpaper, if you don't have any Velcro, you can take the back of the floppy disk and put your 3 or 4 little dots of super glue on there, and then just go right directly to a piece of shop roll. Here's a piece of shop roll and it's got the cloth back on it, so you can go in and just super glue it right on there. The thing is, when you take it off, you kind of have to soak this in a little dish of acetone to break the super glue down to peel it off. I don't particularly like that method, but I'll show you one that's even better. Some of the sandpaper that you buy that has the Velcro backing on it, we punched out a few sheets of it earlier. If I could find it. Okay, I think this is it right here. Yeah, that's got the back part of the Velcro. So using a piece of aluminum, I turned down a little mandrel here, very lightweight, but I've got the back side of the Velcro on the face of it. And if you've got this paper that's got the other half of the Velcro, you can just put it right on there. And I tell you what happens, because this is aluminum, and you've got that layer of the Velcro on there, it gives you a little separation or a little pad, and it makes it almost like using the sponge pieces. Makes a real nice finish. The control is just, I can't, you have to try these things, but the control of laying this thing over on the edge and working it is very user friendly. Now, back to putting the sponge back ones on with two-sided tape. Well, let's see if I can get the tape thing got all dirty. Anyway, if you don't have two-sided tape, let me show you a technique that I think it's John Saunders Machine Shop, if you're familiar with his YouTube channel. They did a rather lengthy video on this technique, I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago. But I had never heard of it. When they first did it, the musical instrument makers was doing it to hold a template or a fixture onto a board or a piece of aluminum so they could route it freehand. And your first thought when you saw them doing it is, that's not going to hold. But what you do, the way the process works, is you take a piece of the blue painter's tape. Now you don't want the plastic stuff, you want the stuff that feels like the old-timey masking tape. You want the paper type, the paper carpet tape. You put it on there. If you get you a steel roller or something, you can roll it across there like a rolling pin to make sure you've got it compressed and pushed down. You want to make sure that the painter's tape has got a good bite onto the surface of whatever you attach it to. I use this technique a lot for holding wood stock on the gantry router for routing it. And the advantage of it over two-sided tape, when you get ready to pull it off and remove it, if you got a little overhang where you can get under that blue carpet tape, it just pulls right off. No cleanup, no acetone or anything like that involved where you got residue when you're using two-sided carpet tape. So what you do is you put one layer of the carpet tape on one piece, your fixture. In this case here, I put a layer of the carpet tape on the 1, 2, 3 block. And then I took this piece of aluminium, and I put a piece of carpet tape on the back of the piece of aluminum. So now you got a piece on your stock, and you got a piece on your holding fixture. What you do is they get you some good super glue, and I don't own stock in the company, but this is one of the best I've found. It's Loctite Professional. You get it at Home Depot, Lowe's probably. What you do is go in there and run you a bead of the super glue on top of the carpet tape on both pieces. And then you lay it down and you kind of rub it around a little bit, and then you don't want to rub it too long or it'll set, and then let it set. When that super glue hardens on the two pieces of carpet tape, which what I did here, you can see what I did. I went in, and this was done in one pass. I put it in the Bridgeport mill. Let's see what I took off. I took off 110 thousandths in one pass, and that carpet tape never broke loose. Yeah, I think it's got to do with the shear strength of the super glue biting the two layers of carpet tape. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I saw the John Saunders video, and then I tried it, and sure enough, it works. I don't even think, when I put the two pieces together, I don't even think I squash it in a vise or a press or anything like that. I just leave once it sets, like let it set for about 10 minutes, and I go stick it in the mill, and you start milling. So the point being, you could use that same concept on these floppy disks if you don't have two-sided tape. Put you a layer of the tape on one side of the floppy disk, and put you a layer of the blue tape on the back of your sanding disc. This one here was punched out of a piece of shop roll, so it's got the blue carpet type back. So I can put a layer of carpet tape on the back of this sanding disc. Obviously you can't do it on the ones that's got the Velcro already attached. You can't do it on a sponge, so it's a narrow audience there. One of my favorite types of to make sanding discs out of is using these 3M microfinish paper. These are the backing on these are Mylar, and you can put the carpet tape on there and attach the two pieces together, and that makes a good sturdy one that will. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about now one of my favorite tools to put in the Foredom or the motor tool, and a lot of people just refer to them as Kratex. This is kind of like a specific manufacturer. The true name of these cutters are Rubberized abrasives. Now, this box contains some of the small round bullet shaped ones. It will have after this a little video showing how to use that Kratex brand bullet abrasive to do some engine turning. But first, let's talk about them as they apply to polishing and buffing. They come in several different flavors. Here is a block. They come in blocks. This one's been ground down to taper to get me a pointed knife edge on the end of the block. They're very easily sculpted and shaped to get any profile that you want. For instance, the round ones here can be tapered to a knife edge, concave, convex, any kind of profile that you want just by holding a piece of sandpaper or a file, a mill bastard file to them to sculpt them and shape them. Once they wear, I never throw them away, because here's one that's just kind of worn down to the nub, but this comes in occasionally handy for getting inside of small, tight spaces. Here's one where it's mounted on a floppy disc versus using the conventional screw holes that come in them. The reason I've got it face mounted, I could utilize that flexibility of the floppy disk a little bit and use this to walk it on the edge. You could also use it kind of like a miniature stone for holding small pieces up next to this as it's rotating for removing burrs. But the thing that you need to keep in mind on these rubberized abrasive wheels, by the way, this block here, they're sold. I buy mine from Smoky Mountain Knife Works. I'll include a linkage to them. But there's other companies that make these blocks. But they're a great tool for cleaning up and deburring just about anything. One of the things that they're used for a lot is for cleaning your knife blade. The bolsters or the blade get removed, scratches and so forth. But the thing to keep in mind on the round ones, the ones that mount on your motorized tool arbor, the round ones come in a great variety of durometers and hardness. These gray wheels here, I would say, are probably at the lowest end of the durometer for the ones that mount on the shaft. And I'll show you, we'll do a quick demo right here. What I'm going to do is take a casting of a thumb screw, and using two tools, I will use the rubberized abrasive wheel first, and then I will follow it with the felt, just a traditional solid felt buffing wheel. I apply a little of the green rouge on there and show you what we can do with just those two tools as far as polishing. So to start with, let's put the rubberized wheel in here and give it a quick overpass. Now, the one thing that's important, particularly when using the harder durometer abrasive disc, is keep that tool flowing. Don't stop. Particularly with the hard ones, you'll cut and remove a little bump or indent into the material. Okay, so we gave it a quick go over there with the rubberized wheel. Let's load up just put a little rouge on the felt, and then we're gonna go right over the top of where we hit it with the rubber wheel. In just a few passes, I put a mirror finish on that piece of bronze casting. So these two are used quite often in conjunction for polishing small parts, that is the abrasive, the rubberized wheel and the felt wheel. Good. We'll do a little quick video of engine turning. We're going to be using these Kratex rubberized wheels. They're very, very hard. And to get this, what I call engine turning. See, here's some I decorated a draw knife with I made last year. But a relatively simple tool to make. And what we'll do is, let me show you how I made the tool, and we'll take it over and put it in the drill press and demonstrate it. What I've got here is a collar that's got a taper on the inside of the collar, and then the shaft here has got a taper to match it, and we bored out a cavity there to hold the Kratex wheel, the Kratex blank, and then when you slip the collar back over there, you've got 4 slots, kind of like a collet. When you slip the collar over there and push it up, it locks it in so that it won't spin. And all we've got here past the cavity on the inside is we've got a threaded, I think it's a 1032 thread with the stop nut on it. The overall length of this thing is only 3 inches long. You can make it whatever size you want. Relatively easy to make. So what we're going to do is put this in the drill press and demonstrate how simple it is to do this engine turning. So I'll stop the camera and get set up over to the drill press. Okay, put the tool in here first. Tighten it down. I always like to put a little block underneath there and come down and dress. It's got a piece of sandpaper on it, and I dress off the bottom of the Kratex wheel. Let me check the camera, make sure. Yeah, I think it'll work. Okay, so what we're going to do is fire this guy up, and you just randomly go down. You could, if you wanted to put this on an XY table so you could get precision spacing and precision control, that would work. Typically, I kind of prefer to have somewhat of a random pattern. It makes it look a little more homemade. Anyway, you just got to come down there, just put a little pressure on the quill handle, and compress that Kratex abrasive wheel, and that's all it is to it. Should impress your wife or your girlfriend, or both. Okay, let's see what it looks like here. There we go. That's all there is to it, guys. Now that we've talked about different types of sandpaper and attachment mechanisms to the floppy disk, let's talk about some alternatives, kind of branching away from the floppy disk, some other tools that you could use for buffing and polishing. One of the ones I use quite a bit is I'll take the Scotch-Brite pads, and as you know, this comes in all different grits and abrasive cutting action. I'll just punch out a bunch of blanks, and taking a punch, I will punch a starter hole through the center of the Scotch-Brite round blanks and attach it directly to the mandrel. They wear fairly fast, but there are situations where they come in quite handy in your Dremel tool. And I think Dremel makes an accessory. They're quite a bit more expensive than what you could make a pile out of a sheet of Velcro. Now, another alternative is to use leather. And you saw me punch out some leather blanks in the video, and depending on what size you want that leather blank, just change your leather hole punch to get whatever diameter you want. I did a video, I think it was last year, on sharpening a V-gouge wood carving chisel. And one of the things that I used is I took at the final sharpening on the inside of the V-gouge tool, I sculpted this guy to the shape that I wanted to fit the internal cavity of the carving tool. And show you a little trick on how to sculpt not only the rubberized abrasive wheels, but also the leather. A couple of different ways you could do it. One of the, a quick and dirty way is just mount the leather tool in your Dremel tool or your motorized tool, and get you a piece of rather coarse sandpaper, and just come up there to the sandpaper and sculpt it. You can put a knife edge on it, or you can flatten it off and true it up prior to applying your rouge to the leather. That's basically it's going to become a rotating round leather strop is what we're talking about here. You can see, you can watch it load up with the rouge here. So now it's loaded and ready to polish. What I use this guy a lot for is after I sharpen a knife blade, let's say if I sharpen the knife blade with a fine grit sandpaper, and walking this guy down both sides of the knife blade to pick up my angle, then I will go to a leather strop and walk it down and put a polish on top of that grinding. And the knife makers, carving people, one of the ways that they do it is, of course, if you got a Tormax or something like that, that's different. But what they use is this is a wheel like this. This is a virgin, it's never been used. But this is a very, very hard, stiff cloth buffing wheel. You load it up with the rouge, and the advantage of it is you could go in there with a chisel, a knife, a carving tool, or whatever. If you keep it in the working range here of the axis, because it's so hard and stiff, unlike a softer buffing wheel that will roll the edge over, you don't get that on here. So whether it's a big tool or a little tool, you've got the advantage of making your leather strops in the round. Now let me show you another way. Of course, a second way to dress and sculpt these things is get you an old Bill Bastard file and work it up in this area here, which has probably never been used. Go in there on the file and sculpt the leather on the back of the file. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have two motorized tools, you could use both of them. This one has got a very coarse piece of sandpaper attached to a Velcro back, and then I got the leather that I want to sculpt. So what I do is I turn them both on and come in here with the rotating sandpaper, and I come in here and sculpt it with this. It's a lot more aggressive, a lot faster, and a very effective way of sculpting not only your leather tool, but you can also do the same thing on the rubberized abrasive. It is pretty aggressive, so I tend to use it primarily on the leather versus the rubberized abrasive. Here's one was punched out of a very small leather punch, and it's been sculpted to a knife edge. It comes to a V point. This is what I use for going inside of the V carving tool when it's loaded with rouge to polish and smooth the inside. It being stiff, you don't have the ability to roll it over and curl the edge when you come off the end of it. Okay, one other option as far as polishing tools those you guys may or may not be familiar with Bill Tool Company. Jerry Bill designed this buffing system years ago, and he came out with a super flexible lining buff, several layers in there. And what he would do is, with this mounted on a motor, and he sold blocks of carnauba wax, and you could load this guy up with the carnauba wax, and for small pieces it would put a fantastic finish on, you know, woods, hardwoods, boxwood, rosewood, ebony, etc. And it was very effective. The thing that made it unique was the fact that these are so soft and flexible, it's almost impossible, or I've never had it happen, for it to grab the workpiece or the handpiece and give it a yank. So I was thinking about that the other day. I had several pieces that I needed to polish, and I wanted a similar type buffing system that would not grab or pull, but would also enable me to get down into tight areas and places without it pulling or grabbing. So what I did is taking an old t-shirt I had. It was one of the thermal new material t-shirts, a stretch fabric, and I punched out about a dozen of these, and I punched a hole in each one of them and stacked them and laminated, layered them on a blank mandrel, and just put the screw hole through it and tighten it up. Here's one. It's been used a little bit. This guy here's got a lot more wear on it. But let me demonstrate what you could do with these. I got a few objects here. I got a bunny plane and a lock, and you can. What you do is you got two options. You can load them up with rouge, just like you would on any muffin wheel. You can put a little rouge on there and load it up. These things, like I said, they're extremely soft. So here's a miniature flintlock in sterling silver, and I can go in here and go around this guy and get into all the cracks and the crevices. I just hold it out lightly, and you see it's polishing. Like if you want to polish the head on your miniature Bridgeport, you can go in here and get in all different areas, and it doesn't grab. Now, the reason I polish this coin, there's a back part of it. The reason I polish this with the cloth back tool is it will polish, but it doesn't destroy and remove some of the really fine detail on the coin. Whereas if you use a rubberized wheel, or as the case earlier, if you use a solid felt wheel, a harder buffet wheel, it would get too aggressive and remove the detail. Here's a casting of a Davis level. This is a fine example of where this tool comes in handy. It will actually flex and get down inside the open filigree areas and give it a polish. You know, if you tried that with just a normal felt type buffing wheel, here's an example of a solid felt buffing wheel. You would never get down inside those areas with this, plus you'd end up losing a lot of your detail, say like on the coin. There are other buffing wheels that they make that are laminated. Now, the only problem with these, the laminations come in handy on certain parts, But the problem is the felt or the material that the laminations are made out of are extremely hard and stiff, where this guy here is just absolutely as smooth as a baby's butt. And they're also good for polishing rabbit planes. Let's talk a little bit about the cutoff wheels or separation discs. They're commonly referred to. There's two problems with these guys. One, they're very, very fragile. They will not allow any lateral movement. And also, you got to keep them cool. The way you keep them cool is load them up with either beeswax, or I use a product called Bolube, which is a lubricant, which works very well. I think you can get this stuff at MSC. But the heat problem is not that hard to overcome. The minute those discs get hot, they start deteriorating and wearing down to a nub. The lateral movement, Dremel kind of solved that problem a little bit when they went to this style cutoff wheel. It's mounted on a holder that they call Easy Lock. And what this Easy Lock holder does, as far as the cutoff wheels go, it allows you to have some lateral movement without snapping that disc. Now, of course, the disc is a little thicker and it's fiberglass reinforced, but still, these guys here will take a little bit of lateral movement because the Easy Lock holder compensates for it. Now, the other thing is a lot of guys are not aware the normal size cutoff wheels, the two on the left here, they come in two varieties. One is a thicker wheel, and I think it's like the 420. And if you look at the package, it's 420. The thinner, conventional, more common one is the 409. So just be aware there are two thicknesses. In making the round sanding disc that we looked at previously, the way they were made is you would start off, and I'll attempt to do it here without breaking one, but you would start off with your tubing and using the cutoff disc, you would come down the tubing and slit it. And then the second operation, you would slit it with the 409 or the thinner disc. The second operation would be to follow that with the 420, the thicker disc, and come in and use your original cut as a guide and come down and widen out the first cut. Now you can make it with just the first cut initially, but this gives you, it's just a little easier, a little better control. This gap created by the thicker wheel makes the perfect size to roll your paper inside and put a wedge in there to lock the paper in. Again, there's a good video out there on it. Now, something I just discovered here very recent is the fact that the jewelers use when they're sizing rings. There's a wheel, and I got mine from Rio Grande. It's called a fiber cut disc. The thing about them, they are extremely thin. Just to give you a comparison, the normal thickness of the Dremel is 25 thousandths. These new ones I discovered are a little over 13 thousandths, okay? So they're quite a bit thinner, waste less material, but they're also fiberglass reinforced like the bigger one. But give you an idea of the cut, I'll go in here and make a cut. extremely fine, thin cut. And they are tougher. They will withstand a little more lateral movement. Now, as far as the heat problem, typically what I do is while the tool is running, I'll get a block of beeswax or the bow lube, and I'll just go in here and load it up pretty heavy. So now when you got that wax on there and you're starting to do the cutting, you don't put out as much dust because you've got this lubricant on there, and the minute you see the wheel starting to put out dust, that means your lubrication is dissipated. So just dip it in there again, and you'll be surprised the longevity that you can achieve by keeping the beeswax or the bow lube on the cutoff wheel. Now, one last thing on the wheels. All your new Dremel kits, and for years I had a collection of these things. It comes with the Dremel accessories, and I never knew what they were for until my wife told me one day. What they are dressing stones. So just like the abrasive, the rubberized wheels, you can sculpt these things or dress them within reason. This is an extremely hard, and what this is doing is it's doing two things. It's truing up the wheel in addition to any uneven point or wear that you had on the wheel. It makes it flat, just like you were dressing the rubberized abrasive. So, with that said and done, we're just about done here. I haven't decided if I'm going to make this one video or two. I'm probably going to break it into two sections. But looking over my notes when I took a break here a while ago, I noticed there was 2 or 3 things that I had left out. So real quick, let's go through them. One, I never mentioned on these soft buffing wheels that were made out of the cloth. I showed you loading them up with rouge. Well, if you want a really fine polish, here's one I've used for years. It's a paste polish. You normally load it up. It's actually normally used just with a t-shirt or something like that. But if you want to put it on a motorized wheel, what you can do is put you some inside of a cup here and keep it on the walls, and you just go in here with your cloth and load it up, and keeps it from slinging all over you and everything else. But semi-chrome, good product. The other thing is talk quite a bit about the floppy disk, but here's one I made before I discovered the floppy disk. When I realized I could buy sandpaper that had the Velcro backing on it, I took a piece of aluminum and turned down and made basically a homemade mandrel, and I put the Velcro on it, and I got it's real lightweight. You can get you a pretty good, it has a little padding flexibility, but not anything as severe as the floppy disk. However, they do make a really nice, I've got a piece of 220 sandpaper, I think, on this guy right here. And I don't think I mentioned, but these guys are great little sanding guys for wood. If you want to just, fine pieces of wood. As a matter of fact, one of the first times I talked about these floppy disks was when we were doing in a very early video where we had done wire inlay, and we used the floppy disk with some sandpaper on it to trim and flush off the steel. I'm sorry, silver inlay in the on the chair scrape. So they're great for flushing off your wire inlay. Now, in Home Depot, Lowe's, or whatever, over in the homes department, you'll see a package of these guys right here. They're made to attach to chair legs or different types of feet on household furniture, and it gives you a padding to protect the hardwood floors. And all of them, they come in different sizes. They have a self-adhesive back to them, so you can peel this back off and just stick it right to your floppy disk or your aluminum-made mandrel. So with this guy attached to a floppy disk, what you do is load it up with either semi-chrome or your favorite rouge, and then you use it as a buffer. Let's see, I got one. I'm looking. Yeah, as usual, you can't find it. But anyways, load it up with rouge and all, and just use it as a polishing wheel. A whole lot cheaper than buying them for the intended purpose. One of the things I didn't mention is although I've never tried it, I don't know why it would not work. But if you were making some blanks or loading up some floppy disk and didn't have the carpet tape, or you didn't want to use the blue painter's tape and super glue, I don't know why you couldn't use the contact cement to attach paper onto the cylinder. One last quickie here. When you're sharpening a knife blade or a carving tool or whatever, I kind of have gotten in the habit over the years of using a black magic marker to go down and mark the two sides. It's going to be sanded, ground, or polished, and that gives you a good reference as you're removing material, sharpening the tool, or polishing it, to see where you're working, where what your angle is, and so forth. So I found it very helpful. Just thought I'd throw that in. So with that, we're going to call it a wrap, and I hope you've learned a few tips. If not, I don't know what to tell you. Anyhow, we'll wrap it up, and stay tuned. If you want to get your mother-in-law to subscribe to my channel, get her to do that, and tell her to click on the bell, and she'll find a notification when I do my next video. With that, have a great day.